Welcome, everybody. So we're here with a very special guest. I saw her once again in Russia. We were both election observers. This is Congresswoman Cynthia Mckinney, political science professor in Bangladesh, presidential candidate for the Green Party. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me to join you. Please pardon me. I'm gulping the juice because I've been teaching for the last 3 hours and I'm about drained. So I'm trying to get a little replenishment. And of course, as you know, as you can imagine, it's very hot here. And so it's just hot but my students, oh my gosh, they just give me such rejuvenation because they ask the most piercing questions, and the good thing about being outside of our part of the world is that the students have grown up in this part of the world, which is the other side of the planet. And the things that we take for granted, they don't. The things that we think everyone takes for granted, they don't. And so when I am particularly engaged by my students, I am oftentimes confronted with my own Westernism. And I try to stay as far away from that as you probably can imagine. I try to stay as far away from that as possible. But sometimes it does come out, and I rely on my students to check me. And even if they're not checking, they're just asking piercing questions that make me think. So do I know what I know because I've been steeped in propaganda? And or do I know what I know because what I actually know is real? So I have to think about that all the time. One example of many is I divide my students into groups. And this happened a long time ago. I've been here 8 years now. And one of the groups called themselves the Hitlerites. Now, I'm thinking to myself when I was confronted with this, why would anyone want to call themselves the Hitlerites? But I'm in Asia. I'm in South Asia. And there was something that Britain or the United Kingdom was doing at the time in South Asia that South Asians didn't like. And that's colonialism. And so if Hitler was fighting Churchill, then South Asians were fighting Churchill. I mean, and so I really had to think about that. And then I had to give myself the freedom that I've never had to actually think about the World War II. But then I also had to maintain the freedom of thought for my students who were actually teaching me a thing or two. So that's just one example there have been many examples of things that I had to rethink and reconsider just because I'm in a different part of the world and their sensibilities are quite different than mine. And then I have to ask myself, well, are my sensibilities real or are they fabricated? Have they been manufactured? And honestly, a lot of what it means to be Western is to live in the world of the Matrix, which is divorced and separated from the world that the Matrix creates. And so I am in that part of the world that has been constructed by several constructs of political constructs of colonialism, neocolonialism, neoliberalism. And we think we know what those phenomena mean until we are on the receiving end. And then when we're on the receiving end, it doesn't feel too good, does it? Well, it's what the United States and the West and the world of the colonizers have done to the rest of the world for the last 300, 400 years. And when that small group of people, now I've divided, now I've come up with a new construct for my students. And that is, I have 2 templates that we started on day 1. And we are trying to sort of fill them out or populate them. And the first construct is one that I'm most familiar with, and that is the international system of states where you've got what Vladimir Putin calls the golden billion. Well, how did they become the golden billion? And so we go through this history with my students of, well, you've got the world is basically divided. If you're a Black person, if you're an African American and you travel around the world, you know that the world is divided into apartheid. It's an apartheid world. And so there's the world of the colonizers, and they have something in common. And there's the world of those who got colonized, and they have something in common. And then what you find out, and then you get some phenomenon, like, a recent phenomenon like Melania Trump, who does not come from the world of the colonizers. So she makes mistake after mistake after mistake, because the people who are her handlers, the people who handle her, are putting her in this world, this apartheid world, but they're putting her in as a colonizer. But Slovenia never colonized anybody, right? But she doesn't understand all of this deep, higher level politics that's going on. And so she makes a mistake. She goes to Kenya, and her handlers dress her as the Bwana. Well, what is the Bwana? The Bwana was the white male, pith hat, wearing pith helmet, wearing explorer, if you want to make it nice, or colonizer, if you want to make it real. And they were abusing the people in Kenya. So she goes and she dresses as the Bwana's wife, and she gets booed. Now, this is right after she comes off as a plagiarist, because she plagiarized Michelle Obama's speech. This is poor woman. She doesn't know, A from B, Adam from Bolson. I'm going to say the Bolsheviks, but I think she kind of knows that very well. And so she doesn't know A from B, and she makes a mistake. She plagiarizes, and then she says she goes into hiding, and then she says, okay, I'm going to go to Africa. That's my first trip, and I'm, going to reestablish myself as first lady. And then she gets booed. Why? Because this experience of colonialism. So I start my students off with Frantz Fanon, and we look at the psychology of the colonizer and the colonized, and what is the shared psychology there. And poor Melania makes this mistake. And so basically, being over here in this part of the world with the experiences that I have, it's given me the opportunity to really look at the United States in a way that, sort of like Malcolm X, after he went on the Hajj, and he was a different Malcolm X when he came back, so he was able to understand a whole lot more about the United States and about the rest of the world by traveling outside of the United States. And of course, that the best way to learn a lesson is to experience it. The best way to know that the stove is hot is by touching it. And you're not going to do that too many times after you actually touch it. So I've been fortunate enough to live my life in such a way that I can actually touch a whole lot of places around the world. And that gives me a kind of real perspective that is divorced from the propaganda that we get, or that the propaganda that the United States gives. Voice of America is sort of the last place I tell my students to go. Don't go to CNN, don't go to BBC, don't go to So I did one exercise with them. I don't want to take up all the time because I know you got some questions and I want to talk about some other things. But so I'm trying to get them to understand that their whole lives, they've been steeped in this world, this neo-colonial world of apartheid, where they have a certain role. Now it's a neoliberal world as well. And they have a certain role and they can't step outside of that role. And stepping outside of the role means actually thinking about things and doing some independent critical analysis of your own society or the way the world is structured or what your experiences are or whatever. And all I want to do is expose my students to this menu smorgasbord of ideas that are out there that help them to navigate the world as it will be, and hopefully as they will help it to become in their futures. So one of the things that like I said, we start with Frantz Fanon, but we even start with the university at which I teach, which is an English language university. And the idea was that, how can I say, the great culling machine is what I just explained to my students yesterday. So I had Catherine Austin Fitz. She came to visit me twice here in Bangladesh. She visited the students. She got to know the students very well. And then she gave her analysis of what their experience is like. And so basically what she said is that the world in which we live, this neo-colonized, neoliberal world, is nothing more than a great culling machine. And those states, that golden billion of those roughly 1 billion Western Europeans that were responsible for colonialism and everything that has come after, globalization and everything that has come after, that basically enjoy 80% of global GDP, and the rest of us have to eke out a living with the remaining 20% of global GDP, as explained to us by James Wolfenson. So the university at which I teach was created to stop that resource flow from the colonized world to the colonizers. So basically the founders of the university said, no Bangladeshi should have to leave Bangladesh in order to get a world-class education. So basically, my university provides a place for people who have international educational scholarly experience to come here and share that experience with the rest of my students. So now, unfortunately, a large portion of that then becomes consumed with Eurocentrism, which is one of the byproducts of the colonial experience. So then we have to have some way to strip the Eurocentrism and the Indo-Racismo from the students, because in order for them to be really free to think and free to analyze and free to become the leaders that the world needs them to be, and that Bangladesh needs them to be, well, they can't be Eurocentric, because then they're always chasing after somebody else's dream, or their dream is dependent on what somebody else's dream is for themselves, and then maybe I can get a little piece of that. No. So I perform that function at my university, and I actually ask them to question everything, question me too. And as a result, and I use not only Frantz Fanon, but I also use Paulo Freire, who in Pedagogy of the Oppressed told us what the role of the real teacher is. The teacher's role is to learn from the students, and at the same time, for the students to learn from the teacher. So it's a give and take, it's a back and forth. And the teacher is not pouring knowledge into the students or pouring statistics into the students, but the teacher is leading the students on this journey of self-discovery. And so now then I also use my PhD learning from in leadership and change from Antioch University. And I give my students a good steeping in, I don't try to do too much in the theory part, but I do give them leadership theory as well. But I give them sort of the practical experience of what is it that I need to be thinking about if I want to be the leader that my institution wants me to become. And so basically what I have done now is I have them do an exercise. It's called Who Am I? And I ask them a bunch of questions, and I ask them to answer those questions. They're all private. So I don't share that information with anyone. They can tell me exactly what they think. I've added one question to this. It's about 20 questions. And now I've added one. And that question is, who are your heroes? Because if your heroes, like I have a lot of students, and Ben Shapiro is a hero of theirs, and I'm saying, what planet are you on that Ben Shapiro is your hero? And where are you getting this? You're in South Asia, and out of all of the heroes of South Asia, that's who your hero is. So now I'm sort of showing them how everything that they read, learn about, think about on Bollywood, they have their own Dollywood, and as opposed to our Tennessee Dollywood, and they have their own. But like I ask them, I go to a Bangladeshi newspaper. I say, we got to go to the international section. Go to the international section. I say, you select the article. Without fail, 100% of the time, they select the article. And guess where the article is from? It's their newspaper, but the article is from Agence France Presse, Reuters, Associated Press. The article is not from them, so it's not reflective of their thinking. And so I have to show them, this is new, but the situation has become so acute with the westernization and the drive for westernization that I have to show them that you're already steeped in Western ideals. Go and find someone in South Asia, if not in your own country, who is your hero. Find someone who might think like the people that you need to be thinking about leading. And so increasingly, I'm at the point where I'm running out of time. And I'm running out of time because the semester isn't long enough. And now they've shortened the class session meetings, and they've increased the number of students because people over here just love to learn. And so they're, the classrooms are at the wazoo with too many students. And so now I'm just running out. I need a semester 2 so that I can delve more deeply into this. Actually, as it turns out, I am, if not the most popular professor, I am among the most popular professors at the university, and it's because I want to empower them. I don't want to tell them how to think. I don't care what you think. I just want to make sure that there's a thinking process that brought you to the conclusion that you have. So now, if you can show me that Ben Shapiro deserves to be your hero, then but I don't think that's going to happen. It hasn't happened yet. Heck, Ben Shapiro can't even be Candace Owens' hero. So, so anyway, I'm kind of having fun. And even though, like I started out and I said, oh, I'm so tired. I'm so, sort of drenched. But it's it's fun for me, and I intend to do it for as long as I can do it. And then one day I'm going to say, while I still can do it, because you know how you leave is also as important as how you enter. And so then I'm going to say, you know, I can do it, but now it's time for me to kick back under the coconut tree, sip some coconut water, and watch my progeny produce. So anyway, that's where I am right now.
Let me ask you, first of all, and my audience has some questions for you. I'll mute you so we don't get the feedback, and then I'll unmute you when you're talking.
Yeah. Oh, wow. So before this happened, you know, it's really fortunate for me that some of my students. So first of all, to understand the demographics of where I am, I would say that Bangladesh is probably 90, maybe 99% Sunni Muslim. And it's a very conservative Muslim environment where the people actually perform Hajj, not for show off reasons, but because they actually are believers. And I have to say that in my experience, it's the most sharing community I have ever seen in my life. And that is because, like, for example, when I go home, I always bring something back. And I will give something, a small token, you know, to the people who have helped me to remain here. I will never forget them. And the next thing I know, they're distributing what I brought for them. They're distributing it to the whole office. You know, it's the way they think. They share. They're a community. They, like a student of mine, former student now, but he's my current TA, hurt himself because they actually are giving. They, you know, it's a part of their religious responsibility to share with the poor. And so they do that. And my student hurt his back because he was giving meals to the poor. Now, you know, in the United States, you can't give food to the poor. You can't give food to the poor. I used to feed the poor, the women at the masjid. This is back in Atlanta. They would cook the huge vats of food, rice and whatever, you know, some kind of curry or stew or beef or something. And then we would distribute that to the homeless people, many of whom in the United States are veterans. And I did that every Thursday. So I would go up to Washington, and then I would come back on Thursday afternoon. Then Thursday evening, I'm at the parking lot where the homeless are, and they know that they can come and get a good tasting warm meal from us. And the city of Atlanta owned the parking lot. We didn't know that. We thought the church owned the parking lot because the parking lot was adjacent to the church. We were given an order that we could not occupy the parking lot. It's a public parking lot, and we couldn't occupy the parking lot because the city of Atlanta said we can't do it. So we couldn't feed the people any longer. And then the only homeless shelter in the city of Atlanta got shut down. I mean, so we know what the results of capitalism are. We know what the results of neoliberalism are. But even the best intentions or the best motivations of individuals are stifled, where we don't want to see people homeless, and and then they shut down the homeless shelter. The only homeless shelter in the city of Atlanta, they shut it down. Why? Because Emory University didn't want to have homeless people around, and the downtown business community didn't want to have homeless people in downtown Atlanta. You can't have homeless people on Peachtree Street. And this is what we think is normal. That's not a normal human existence. But what I've experienced here in Bangladesh, I believe, is what ought to be normal, where people share and they care and they give and they care about each other and they care about strangers. So, I mean, is it perfect? Is it, no, of course, there are problems, but there are problems everywhere, but we don't have that problem, that problem of turning your back on people. I mean, so now, with that having been said, there's probably a very, very small, which is like the original Muslim community that populates an area called Old Dhaka. They basically are the Shia community. So there is a very small Shia community. And of course, that there have been manufactured efforts to divide the Sunni and the Shia.
Yes.
And as a result of that, it's very, very, now the students, I used to show them Michael Oren. Michael Oren was the ambassador from Israel to the United States. And he's speaking at Aspen, the Aspen community, whatever, that think tank. I shouldn't say think tank, because what you're not allowed to do is actually think at the think tank, the manufactured thought tank. And so he's speaking there and he's saying, well, from the Israel, I don't know, I no longer speak for Israel, but I can say that we choose the Sunni Muslims over the Shia. And then I go to Wesley Clark. I go to a video of Wesley Clark. See, I have all of this documented. So, it's not me saying it. I let the principals actually deliver their own message. I just help the students to understand what that message is. And so then I go to Wesley Clark, and Wesley Clark is explaining ISIS. And he says, who defeats Hezbollah? You need fanatics to defeat Hezbollah. ISIS was created to defeat Hezbollah. I didn't say it. Wesley Clark said it. Okay, so I show them how their thoughts are manipulated from day one, no matter if it's on their television, no matter if it's in their newspaper, no matter what it is. And then, of course, heaven forbid, you actually look at CNN and Fox and all of that, you're going straight to the West. And you're getting your information from there. And of course, then, how can you trust your own, the integrity of your own thoughts? So now the students are beginning to question. They told me, we want to know about North Korea. They told me, we want to know about Iran, right? I don't know what the imam is saying, But now they are beginning to view Iran in a different kind of way, and they want to know, well, I want to know about that. And so then, of course, I was able to introduce them just about 2 weeks ago, before all of this broke out. I had a special chit chat. I had a girl chat with Marzieh Hashemi, who is the English language face and voice of Press TV. Yeah. And I spent what did I call it? 60 minutes with Marzieh. And so I let the students ask any question they wanted, but they were going to get a Iranian, African-American, non-Western response, a point of view. I try to do that as much as I can. And so now they, one of the groups said, well, we want to be Iran. That's wonderful. So now I've got to learn about North Korea. I had the opportunity a long time ago to go to North Korea, but I think the invitation came at the same time I was already planning to go to Japan. So I wasn't able to do it. And I regret that now. So I tell my students, I have to help them to understand that everything they read is put before them for a reason. And so if you can say, well, one of the things I tell them, I say, well, you know, what does your Constitution say about your political system? I ask them to think about that. So is your Constitution applicable to the status of your rights today? And of course, you know, always the Constitution always falls a little bit short because it's an aspirational document. So I say, well, now, don't tell me what you think you know about North Korea. Look at their Constitution. At least go to their Constitution and speak from the facts as were written by North Korean people. So, and I forbid them to use Wikipedia. They can't use Wikipedia. So I would say that this has been a very eye-opening series of not that like my class, you know, I talk about that kind of stuff before anyway, about the purposeful divisions that serve political purposes of some people between Sunni and Shia. But now because of the series of events and how other states, particularly Sunni states, like Saudi Arabia, like United Arab Emirates, like Qatar, like, you know, you can go right down the line, like Bangladesh. And they feel that they've been let down. And they feel, these are my students now. So yesterday I asked them about this red heifer thing because, you know, I am not a religious scholar, even though I spent 12 years of my formative educational life in Catholic high school and elementary school, and almost went to Catholic college. Almost went to Notre Dame, but I didn't. And so, so even though, you know, I have that background, I can't say that, you know, I'm more steeped in my secular upbringing. Well, I guess that's not upbringing. If you go to Catholic school, you got to go to mass every Friday. So I went to mass every Friday, and then in school, and then I went to mass on Sunday when I was not in school, right? So you go into mass at least 2 times a week. And but even that, I'm not the biblical scholar or the religious scholar or anything like that. So I rely on, and certainly then that's not the whole Protestant world. And, you know, there's a lot when you start talking about religion and that sort of thing. So There's a lot that I don't know, and I recognize that I don't know it. And I'm in a part of the world where I know absolutely nothing. And I know the Quran is a beautiful book to look at, but I have not read it. It's beautiful and it's Arabic, but I haven't read it. So there's a lot that I have to do in that regard. So I rely on the expertise of others. And so I know that in terms of in the world of politics, I'm on that world. But now when you blend the world of politics and the world of religion, then that's sort of where I'm on shaky ground. And
well,
so
let me just ask, you were talking about constitutions before and freedom and such. We got a question here about the Uhuru 3 case. Can you comment on that?
I really cannot comment on that, except that there's something more that I need to do in that regard. And the reason is because that is about our rights as US citizens to interact with anybody on the planet with whom we choose to do so. And that's supposed to be our right. And the United States government has said, no, you can't do that. In fact, as you know, Caleb, they threatened even those of us who are no one on this planet would say that the United States has an exemplary election system. And yet, when we go and try and understand how other republics carry out their business of elections, we get threatened. And so that's one thing. But the Uhuru 3 case is very, very important. And I have to do more. And I admit that I haven't done anything. And I need to do more. And the more that I need to do is I will receive instruction from somebody who will tell me, okay, Cynthia, we need you to do this. I am terribly deficient in that, and they're picking on people. And, I've said this all along. If you don't want it to happen to you, stop it when it happens in the Black community. I've been saying that for 30 years, actually longer than 30 years. And nobody, it doesn't happen, doesn't stop. So, if someone has an idea of something that I could do, I understand that they have lawyers. I don't know if they're happy with their lawyers. If they are happy with their lawyers, then maybe there's something else that could be done. But we all need to pitch in some kind of way wherever we can fit in order to help in that case.
Absolutely. Now, Gavin is asking, is X or Twitter the only place to follow your work?
Well, this is the thing. I am so busy doing the work that I haven't taken the time to build, I do have my website. And basically these days I use my website as a private place where I can talk honestly and openly about any topic with my students. So my website is very well populated when it comes to the student pages, but it's not very well populated when it comes to the other pages. But I had said that the next break that I got, I was going to call my, what do you call those? My website host. I was going to call them and let them take me through the whole sort of process of updating it and making it more user-friendly. I do have information there. Like, for example, I had some thoughts about, I don't know which one I should include because there's so many. So like, if you go to look Cynthia's writing, I think if you go there, but I don't want to send you that. One of the pages is like really jumbled and I got to unjumble it. But each one of the posts also has its own page. And there's one, there's one article that I wrote about, I call it the Purple Revolution, when chickens come home to roost. And in that article, I discuss the weaponization of migration is one thing, and how George Soros basically took over the Democratic Party, and how Black Lives Matter was also taken over by George Soros. And so now, if you really want, when was the last time Black people had $1 billion? So that ought to let any thinking people would say, well, since we didn't give the 40 acres and a mule, and we didn't give reparations, and we haven't done this, and we haven't made amends for Jim Crow, why would every corporation in the US give tens of thousands or millions of dollars to Black Lives Matter? Well, if you did a little research, you would find out that Black Lives Matter is divided into two groups, right? So one group is the foundation, and that's where all the money went. And the other group is the people out there who are protesting, wearing their hearts on their sleeve because they don't want their father or brother to be the next victim of a police slaying.
Well, it seemed like
so you've got the activists.
There was some kind of effort to subvert Black nationalism, right? Because Soros pushes more the identity politics, kind of the woke, I don't know what you want to call it, the academic stuff. And it seems like, there has been Black nationalist activists with real roots in communities for decades. Do you think Soros is trying to subvert Black nationalism?
This is the thing about subverting Black nationalism. I'm a Black nationalist. I can't be subverted. So I don't understand those people who are, then Black nationalists won't be subverted. That's why the Uhuru 3 case is what it is. What happened with Patrice Cullors? What happened with, I don't know those. I know the one who got kicked out. She's a Black nationalist, the professor at UC Long Beach, I think at Cal State Long Beach. She's the one that got kicked out. Professor Abdullah, I can't remember. I shouldn't even admit that I can't remember her name, because I know her and she's been very good to me over the years. But she got kicked out because she is a Black nationalist. Now, so I think we have become so loose with our that we don't know who is anymore, because we've allowed, there's left. I call myself the far left, right? And then there's the faux left. And then I say, okay, well, I'm so far left that I've become right, because, the political tectonics have shifted underneath our feet while we were literally standing on them. And that applies to us as much as it applies to my students as well. So we've got to pay attention to the ground underneath us. And where is it that the Congressional Progressive Caucus, they're progressive about what? Everybody's voting for the defense budget, the offense budget, right? Everybody's voting for the Pentagon. Everybody's voting for Big Pharma. How is that progressive? And when I was there, we were talking about having a demonstration. We were going to sit down and occupy the House of Representatives. And my mistake was that the California member of Congress that I was having this discussion with, and we were determined we were going to do something. And so we said, we can't do it alone. That was our mistake. We could have done it alone, and we should have done it alone. But we thought we needed Ted And out of, at that time, I think the Democrats had the majority, so that's 218. Out of 218, surely we can get 10 people. We can get 8 more people to join us, and let's do a sit-in. That's what we're going to do. Let's occupy. We're going to do an occupy. We couldn't get 8 sitting members of Congress to demand a budget that reflected the needs of the people of the United States. We couldn't get 8 allies to join us. And as a result, that's one of the things I will always regret that I didn't, I didn't do. Because I think the point, so the other day I was in front of the US Embassy by myself. Me and a girlfriend, not by myself, but I was the only US passport holder, and she was a UK passport holder. She came to visit me. And we said, oh, we're going to do an action. While we're together, we're going to do an action. I had been threatening to do it, and some of the people here had advised me, oh, you don't have to do it by yourself. And so I waited a little while. But the lesson from this is that I should never wait to do what's right. I shouldn't wait for others to join me to do what's right. And so we never did that protest. We still need that protest to be done. And now, just like we got the faux Black left, we got the faux progressive movement, we got the faux, what do they call themselves? The squad. So where's the real? Where's the real? So
speaking of that, you've talked about how, when you first got into Congress, the folks with the Israel lobby tried to get you to sign a pledge or something. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I can talk about that. Which is because that's why I end up in Bangladesh, right? So I'm punished. But living a life in alignment with one's values is not ever going to be considered punishment. It should not be considered punishment. So I read the book by, let me see, what's his name? John Shackelford? Was that his name? The first CIA blower, In Search of Enemies. I'll tell you his name in a minute. In Search of Enemies by, here's the, John Stockwell. John Stockwell. This is the book. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. So now I don't know StreamYard that well. So can I send you, is there a way for me to send you the link? Or
I could find the book cover and put it on the screen if you'd like. Oh, I think we just lost our guest there. Hopefully she comes back in. So yeah. Let me just, well, I'll just put the image on the screen of the book she was referencing. I have not actually read this book, In Search of Enemies by John Stockwell. So we'll put the image on the screen here. Here we go. That's the book she was referencing. So there we
Yeah.
go. Go ahead.
You can mute. Yeah. And so this book really rocked my world. So, okay, I had a very strong sense of right and wrong because being steeped in the Catholic education system, I had a very strong sense of right and wrong also because I was born during the civil rights movement, you know, and the civil rights movement was all around me. So, and I knew that U.S. foreign policy, even though I studied international relations at University of Southern California. From University of Southern California, I went to the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy. I knew U.S. foreign policy. I knew the roots of U.S. foreign policy. And I knew that U.S. foreign policy was rotten to the core. But I also knew, as a result of, being steeped in civil rights movement, the soft underbelly of U.S. domestic politics was also rotten to the core. And so when I got elected, and, I had a whole busload of people go up to Washington with me. We were so full of hope that we would be able to change their lives and change the imprint or the footprint of the U.S. foreign policy on the world. Of course, it turned out to not be the case, but we were still full of hope. And I asked to serve on the International Relations Committee because I had studied international relations all of my life, all of my academic life. I was even at that time working on a PhD from Fletcher School. And so I was trying to sort of wrap my head around what I've now, how many years later is this? I'm still trying to wrap my head around, but with the help of my students. One of the templates, I present. Oh, that's where I can do that. Under present. Okay, so I'm trying to remember the question before I got disconnected.
I was asking you about the Israel lobby and the pledge.
Oh yeah, so they asked me that. So what? So is there a way I can? Let me see. Slides, video file, and share screen. Does StreamYard have I just went out and bought this. I just went out and bought this. I'll show it to you. This Wacom tablet, right? Because I was trying to do an online class with my students, and I needed to draw something, and I couldn't draw the darn thing. And they said, "Oh, you need to get a tablet, a graphics tablet." So I go all over trying to find a graphics tablet, and I get this darn graphics tablet. I gotta start using it so I can learn how to use it, right? And I won't learn how to use it until I actually start using it. But I have a template. So I was telling you in the beginning that I have the international system template. Well, I have devised another template that I use for my students. And it's got 3 people sitting. It's an oval table, and it's got 3 people sitting at this end of the oval. It's got 3 people sitting at that end of the oval. It's got 10 people sitting on the long side, and then it's got another 10 people sitting on the opposite long side. So we've got 26 people sitting around the table. And then what we do is we looked at COVID. And so now at the head of because, if it's an oval table, any place could be the head. So then we start looking at issues, and we want to say, okay, so now this is a spokesperson, but this is the brains. So we know when it comes to COVID, Tedros was the spokesperson, but he's not the brain. So now let's try and figure out who the other people are that sit around this table. And this is my template for global social control, right? And so now we go and we try to say, okay, so now who sitting around the table? Well, now, actually, to be honest with you, I have been grappling with that as an issue of curiosity ever since I was working on my PhD at Fletcher. That long. And of course, I was doing other things in between. And but now we're starting to actually put names on those heads. Those names are not necessarily individuals. And there were things that happened to me that allowed me to fill in a few of those names. So when my students are dividing themselves into groups now, and one of the groups in each one of my sections is going to be Israel. Why? Because Israel sits at the apex of this whole global apartheid political international system of neoliberalism or whatever. They sit at the apex of it. So we have to put Israel in the mix. And people can't just say, well, you know, my country is a Muslim country, and so therefore we don't have anything to do with Israel. That's not true. Because there's something called, Pegasus spyware? Well, the government of Bangladesh bought it from Israel. So, and they're not the only one. I mean, they're just here, but, you know, so there's things that are happening that we have to pay attention to. And so when I was asked to sign a pledge for another country, I was like, what the heck is this? Because that's the way Washington, D.C. works, right? You sign a pledge. If I get elected, now this is not after you've gotten elected. This is when you're in the process of running. So that means you're not the only one signed the pledge. Everybody who's on the ballot has signed the pledge. Not on the ballot. Everyone who is going to get your vote, has the opportunity to get your vote, is going to sign that pledge. And that's how we end up with the continuity of policy that we have. And that's because everyone sitting in the United States Congress has signed the pledge. And in most of the general assemblies or legislatures for each of the states. Because if Hurricane Bessie comes across my door and blows my house down, then guess what? And I'm in Texas, I got to call FEMA, and guess what? I got to sign a pledge in order to get TEMA, which would be the Texas Emergency Management Agency. In order to get help from TEMA, I got to sign a pledge that I'm not going to support the boycott of Israel. Now, what does Israel, my father asked, what does Israel have to do? What does Tel Aviv have to do with Stone Mountain, Georgia? And that was 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago when he said that. So now it's not just Stone Mountain, Georgia. It's Stone Mountain, Georgia. It's Austin, Texas. It's probably East Podunk, Iowa, Des Moines, I guess. So this thing has spread, and people didn't understand what it meant to have your elected officials loyal to a country other than your own country. But I think people are beginning to understand what that means now.
Wow. Well, I guess, we're hitting, you set a time for 1 hour, so we're getting there. But I did just have one last question, which is, we did last meet in Russia. So what was your impression of the Russian election? And what have you communicated to your students about it? What would you also like Americans to know about it?
Well, I was really impressed with the Russian elections. And I understand, having been a candidate for so long, I know that there's a public aspect of an election and there's a private aspect of an election. There's a public aspect. There's what can I say? A pre-election day aspect of an election, and then there's an after election day aspect of an election, and then there's the election day activities themselves. So to do a proper analysis, I would have to know what happened before, what kind of rules were established before, what the state of the knowledge of those rules was, then were they carried out on election day, and then how the votes that were cast on election day, or before election day, how those votes were tabulated, and who was present in the process of the tabulation. So now, what I did a series of videos on US elections, and I interviewed this guy. I think his name is Veith, Veith. I have to look him up. I really do need to look him up. He's a lawyer in Virginia, and I think his name is it might not be Veith. It might be something else. I think it starts with a V though. But anyway, this guy has really thought through what an election with integrity looks like. He's thought it through. I mean, he gave me the most comprehensive, well thought out answer that I got in this whole series of questions that I was asking people to comment about elections. And basically, what I remember of that conversation, the thing that stood out the most to me was that you did not have a bureaucracy of election administrators. You know who in his opinion, should administer the elections? The people. The people. And it should be just like a jury process, where everybody is eligible to be trained and participate. And you think of it as a civic responsibility, and that's part of the transparency process. So you don't have these people who are paid as to skew the election this way or to skew the election that way. No, because whatever the will of the people is, that's the will of the people. And that's what you're going to report. That's what I saw in Russia. That's what I saw in Russia. And I couldn't believe it. That this guy in Virginia, and I don't think anybody would believe it, that the average Russian citizen is the, how can I say this? The guarantor of election integrity in Russia. Now, here's the thing. Remember when cryptocurrencies first came out and everybody was talking about, it would be wonderful if we could do elections on blockchain. Well, guess what? Elections are done on blockchain in Russia. So that means that it's a public transaction. Every transaction can be traced, right? So that means that you don't get votes lost like we do in the United States. People go to the poll, they cast a vote. They don't know if their vote's counted or not. But with the blockchain, you can say, okay, that's me. Block 251,904, cell X. That's me. That's where my vote was cast and counted. So what I saw shows me that Russia is on the right track. Now, if Russia's on the right track, what else are they on the right track about? Also, I do not give my, once you teach your students how to read the newspaper, then you can't give them articles from the newspaper, right? You have to give them the actual speeches of political leaders. So I give them the speeches of Vladimir Putin. I give them the speeches of the new from Burkina Faso, the new leader from Burkina Faso, Traore is his name. I give the actual speeches. And then it's for the students to draw their own conclusions. But in one of Vladimir Putin's most recent speeches, he said that he wanted to have more and more referendums and give the people of Russia the opportunity to vote more and more and more on the policies. Well, you know what that sounds like to me? Sounds like direct democracy. Sounds like Libya.
I wanted to ask you about Libya also, because you wrote a very good book about Libya, and you knew Muammar Gaddafi. And so I wanted to ask you, the first book we published as the Center for Political Innovation was the Green Book. That was our first publication. We published our own edition of it because we wanted people to know the truth about their political system and how it worked. But what can you share about Libya, your experiences, about Muammar Gaddafi, what's happened since then?
So each of my class sections breaks down into groups, and then they give themselves. I don't do anything. I just lead them in their own discovery or journey of learning. And so they gave themselves a research question. One of the research questions in the class, we just came from class, and one of those research questions was about neoliberalism. And another group has a research question about anarchy, because I tell them, look, anarchy is not what you think or what you've been told. So why don't you research it a little bit more and see maybe that's the kind of political system that might be preferable to what we have now, which, all republics end up being kakistocracies for a reason. Okay, so then the students were thinking, and they were saying, well, could I do this and can I do that? And give me some states that I can compare on neoliberalism. And so one of the states that I gave them on the neoliberalism question was Libya under Jamahiriya. Look at the well-being of people in Libya under the Jamahiriya versus the United States, the well-being of people in the United States today, and don't use per capita income as a measure. You got to find something else to use as a measure, like life expectancy, maternal mortality, literacy. I mean, there are many different possible measures. Not that one, though. And then for the anarchy question, I gave them again Libya. So I think I might have two groups that are going to look at Libya from vastly different perspectives, because their questions are vastly different, but they're going to be looking at Libya. And I told them one of my favorite final exams that I give, I generally don't repeat any exam because I tell them the world is our textbook. And so what's happening in the world is what is going to teach us. But I do have a soft spot for the Green Book, because within the Green Book, there's so much about political science that I can expose my students to. And one of the final exams or extra credits or whatever that I give is invariably on the Green Book. Yeah, it's an important document. And, you know, I did my PhD on Hugo Chavez and his transformational leadership and the process of change that he introduced inside himself first, and then introduced to those who were touched by his leadership. And, you know, one of the books that was in his personal library when he was very, very young growing up was the Green Book. Yeah.
Wow. That's great. Well, listen, I want to really thank you for your time. I know with our schedules and the time differences, it's quite a trick. So thank you for coming on. We really do appreciate it. And on behalf of the Center for Political Innovation, I do want to say we really look up to you and all the great work you've done, not just in the United States and the US Congress, but internationally, and all the great stands you've taken. So we really do want to thank you for everything and support you.
Thank you, Caleb. And if you guys are active on the Uhuru case, then just give me an assignment, give me a task, give me something to do.
Okay.
Count me as a supporter in all ways.
Well, there's people watching right now that will be happy to do that. So
okay,
that will happen. Very good.
Okay.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And I hope your classes continue to go well. And I hope everything continues to go well for you in Bangladesh. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Bye, guys.